So let's look into our error here, that is our index is out of range and it stops on our location array. So it means that the I is a number greater than the objects in our all locations. Since the I is part of all weather view.count, what I want to do is to say print all weather view has, and let's pass our all weather view count here, and inside I'm going to say print I is, and we pass our I here. So let's run our application. And let's see what we have print out. So we have 6 views, which is correct, and I is from 0 to 5, which is correct. So we have 6 views, and our problem is not here. Our problem is when we come back to our view here. So whenever I click on something, our application is crashing. So then if we check, all weather view has now 12 objects. So we initially had 6, and when we refresh it becomes 12, so it doubles. It means we are doing something wrong here, because our all locations don't get generated twice like our all weather views are being generated. When it comes after 5, the I is 6 and our all locations have only 6 objects, which is 0 based, so the maximum number is 5. It's throwing an error that index is out of range. So if we fix the problem why all our weather views become 12, this issue will be fixed automatically. So to find this, we are going to first get rid of our print statements, and if we scroll up, whenever our viewDidAppear function is being called, this function is called, we can do the print here, did appear, and if I run, you will see that this function will appear once on our first run, and if I go to my view here and come back, it will say did appear one more time. So this function is being called twice. So let's see what we are doing in this function. We are calling location authentication check. So if I jump to definition, here we are doing all these checks, and we're calling our get weather. So let's follow the line and see what we are doing here. In our get weather, we are creating weather views. If we jump here, we are creating a weather view for each location we have. That's why when we second time load this, we have twice as more weather views than we had before, which shouldn't happen, because we don't want to create more weather views since we already have them. There is no point of creating more and more and more. So imagine if our user does back and forth 10 times, we will have the 10 times of our views, which is in our case is gonna be 60. But if you have more cities, it's just gonna be loading the memory more and more, which we don't want. So we need some kind of safety mechanism here to get rid of our initial views before we are going to create more views. So if I go to my viewDidAppear, here we want to know if this is on the first run, like the first loading here, because on the first one is okay, we don't want to do anything, but on a second one we don't want to call this location authentication check. So in our viewDidAppear, I'm going to put an if statement, and for this if statement to work properly, I'm going to have a global variable on top, and I'm going to call this should refresh, and this is gonna be by default equals to true. because when our application runs for the first time, we want to set this true. And here I'm going to check if should refresh, then we want to call this function. Let me just do this. And before we do that, actually, what I want to do before we refresh, I'm going to set my all locations to equals to empty array and all weather views to be equal to empty array as well. And then we're gonna call our location authentication check. So if I run my application from the first time, this should be working properly because our should refresh is true. So this is working. And if we go back here and come back, it will still crash. Or we are setting the function, 1 second. Let me jump to my all locations. Where is our delegate? Okay, we're passing should refresh false here, so but let's go here and scroll all the way down to see where we are setting this. All right, I understand what's the issue here. We are not, it's working only because we have these two lines here, because we are emptying our array. So this is being called every time. So we are not updating our should refresh. So if I uncomment this, our application will still crash because we are not properly using our should refresh for now. We're not updating it whenever is required. So if I run this, it will crash and it will say index out of range. So what we want to do is, we don't want, let me comment this out. We don't want our view to be refreshing every time, because whenever we are refreshing, and it means we are calling our location authentication here, it means that we are deleting everything from our views, and then we are downloading again using our API, our weather information. But in this case, I don't want to do this because this is just wasting network and also wasting my battery of downloading the same information again and again. Because if I open all my cities here and if I just choose a different city here, I don't need to, you can see it just reloaded the information. I don't want to do this again. I just want to come here, and instead of reloading, it just has to jump to the specific city I have chosen. So this is where our should refresh comes in. Why we need this should refresh is because we have two ways of application working. The first one, my user came here, just choose something here and he went back. In this case, we don't want to refresh anything. We want to keep everything as it was. And the second scenario is that my user came here, deleted one of the cities, for example, this one, and then he was going to go back. And in this case, actually, I want to refresh because I want my application to stop showing the city that I just deleted, because right now it refreshes all the time. So that in this scenario, whenever we are deleting something or whenever we are adding something to our locations, in this scenario, we want to refresh so it represents the fresh information. But if I just come here and choose any city, I don't want to refresh it. So that's why we are going to have this should refresh variable. And let me stop this. And this variable we are going to set in our delegate function here. Let's find it, which is here, and we pass our should refresh. So I can say that self dot should refresh is gonna be equals to the variable that I'm sending here. So now if I run my application and if I just come and choose any city name here, we shouldn't see that it's refreshing. So if I choose London, it will just jump to my London city here and it doesn't refresh anything. So whatever we had, it stays as it is. So let's choose like Nicosia and it stays. So we don't have to refresh and we don't have to bring in, download the data again. But let's say in the case if I delete, for example, Nicosia, and if I go back, you can see the Nicosia is still here because we are not refreshing it. So whenever we delete something, let's go to our all weather. So whenever we delete something, let's see, did select route index path, okay. But when we are deleting, which is our function commit editing style here, we want to set our should refresh to be true, so that our user will be not our user, our weather view will be notified whenever we are deleting something and it has to refresh itself.